What happens when the lights of fame fade and the cameras stop rolling? For Caitríona Balfe, the acclaimed actress who brought Claire Fraser to life in Outlander, the answer was stark, raw, and deeply human. A hospital bed, a marathon surgery lasting 24 hours, and a battle that tested her resilience like never before. News of her surgery sent shockwaves through fans around the world. How could someone so radiant, so untouchable on screen, be forced into such a fragile fight behind the scenes? It was a reminder that no matter the accolades or the applause, even stars are vulnerable to the unpredictable storms of life. Doctors prepared for a procedure that would span an entire day and night, a daunting medical ordeal few could imagine. For Caitríona, time seemed to blur. What could have been hours felt like eternity. Her family and closest confidants braced themselves for the long wait, knowing that success was not guaranteed. As the surgical team worked tirelessly, fans online pieced together fragments of information. Rumors swirled, messages of support poured in, and hashtags carrying her name trended across platforms. Yet inside the hospital, reality was quieter, heavier. There were no flashing cameras, no red carpets, only hushed voices, sterile corridors, and the ticking of the clock. Through it all, Sam Heughan was there. Known to millions as Jamie Fraser, Sam is more than just Caitríona's co-star. He is her friend, her confidant, her unwavering presence in moments both celebrated and silent. While others may have seen him as the actor who shares her most iconic on-screen chemistry, those closest to them know their bond runs far deeper. On the day of her surgery, Sam set aside work, appearances, and obligations. He took his place not in front of the cameras, but in a waiting room chair. For 24 hours, he remained nearby, an anchor of calm in a sea of uncertainty. Hospital staff noted his quiet composure, his gentle words of encouragement to Caitríona's loved ones, and the way he kept his focus fixed on one thing: her safety. For Sam, it wasn't a question of whether he should be there. It was instinct. Friendship, after all, doesn't ask for convenience. It asks for presence. There's a peculiar kind of torment in waiting. Every time a door opened, every time a nurse walked past, Sam's heart leapt. Hours crawled by with no news, the silence punctuated only by the hum of fluorescent lights. He scrolled through supportive messages from fans, nodded quietly when friends checked in, but his mind was never far from the operating room. It wasn't the kind of drama he was used to performing on stage or screen. There were no rehearsed lines, no director calling, "cut." This was real, unpolished, and painful. And it required a different kind of strength, the kind measured not in action, but in endurance. For Caitríona, the experience was just as surreal. One moment, life was a blur of scripts, premieres, and international recognition. The next, she was under anesthesia, her body entrusted to a team of surgeons working against the clock. Fame had no power here. Awards and applause couldn't speed up the scalpel or steady the surgeon's hand. What mattered was human fragility, and, in the same breath, human resilience. As the hours stretched on, the story unfolding inside that hospital became one not just of survival, but of loyalty. The image of Sam sitting quietly, refusing to leave, painted a picture of friendship that transcends performance. In an industry often accused of superficiality, theirs is a bond carved from years of shared triumphs and struggles. The world may know them as Jamie and Claire, star-crossed lovers bound by fate. But in reality, they are something perhaps even rarer. Two friends who show up for each other when the world isn't watching. As dawn crept in after the long night, the surgery was still ongoing. Friends and fans alike clung to updates, desperate for good news. For Sam, exhaustion weighed heavy, but he remained steady. He knew that Caitríona would fight, she always had. Still, until the doors opened and the doctors spoke, the outcome remained uncertain. This was the cliffhanger no one wanted, the kind that didn't end with credits rolling or a promise of next season. This was life, fragile and unedited. And in that suspended moment, with the world holding its breath, one truth was clear. No matter how long the night, no matter how heavy the weight, Caitríona was not alone. The longest night finally gave way to morning. After nearly 24 relentless hours, the doors of the operating theater opened. Surgeons stepped out, weary but triumphant, their faces carrying the kind of expression that needed no words. Relief swept through the waiting room like a breath held too long and finally released. Caitríona Balfe had made it through. Sam Heughan, who had barely moved from his chair in all those hours, stood quickly. Exhaustion lined his face, but so did something else, an overwhelming tide of gratitude. The ordeal wasn't over. Recovery would be slow and delicate. Yet the hardest part, the storm of uncertainty, had passed. When Caitríona opened her eyes, the world was a blur of light, machines, and quiet voices. But one presence was unmistakable: Sam, sitting at her side, his hand gently resting over hers. His smile was tired, but it carried the weight of unwavering reassurance. "Welcome back," he whispered, a simple phrase that meant more than applause at a premiere, more than 1,000 lines of scripted dialogue. It was real, it was raw, it was the essence of loyalty distilled into 2 words. For Caitríona, there was comfort in that sight. Through pain and haze, she felt the power of having someone constant beside her. Not a co-star, not a colleague, a friend who had witnessed her strength and vulnerability in equal measure, and chosen to stay through both. In Hollywood, friendships often make headlines when they spark controversy or fade into silence. Yet here was something different, quieter, deeper, and truer. The connection between Caitríona and Sam had been forged over more than a decade of working together, but it was moments like this, far from the stage lights, that defined it. As news of her successful surgery reached fans, relief flooded social media. Hashtags of hope turned into celebrations. But inside the hospital room, away from the noise, there was just one woman taking her first steps toward healing, and one man keeping her spirits anchored. Recovery from such an intensive operation is never easy. Days turned into weeks of rehabilitation, each one filled with challenges. Yet Caitríona faced them with the same determination she once poured into complex roles and demanding shoots. At her side, Sam encouraged, joked, and quietly reminded her of her own strength when exhaustion crept in. Their conversations weren't about fame or careers. They were about resilience, about finding joy in small victories, standing for the first time without dizziness, smiling at the taste of a long-awaited meal, laughing at a silly memory from the set of Outlander. It was in these ordinary moments that extraordinary friendship revealed itself. To those who admire them, this story became more than an account of illness and recovery. It became a lesson. True strength, it seemed, was not just in Caitríona's endurance or in Sam's loyalty, but in the way both intertwined to create something unshakable. Fans began to speak not only of admiration for Caitríona's resilience but of gratitude for the example set by Sam's presence. In a world where relationships are often fleeting, their bond reminded people of the beauty of constancy. Messages poured in from around the globe. People who had faced their own medical battles, who had leaned on a friend through sleepless nights, who recognized themselves in this very human story. What began as private pain evolved into a public symbol of hope and solidarity. As weeks passed and Caitríona grew stronger, she reflected on the ordeal with grace. She spoke of fear, yes, but also of gratitude. Gratitude for the surgeons who worked tirelessly, for the fans who never stopped believing, and above all, for the friend who never left her side. Sam, in his typical fashion, brushed aside praise. To him, it was simple. "You show up for the people you care about," he once remarked. That's all. Yet that, all, was everything. The story of Caitríona's surgery will not be remembered for its medical details alone. It will be remembered for what it revealed. That beneath the glamour of celebrity lies the universal truth that we all need someone to hold our hand when the night is long. When the curtain fell on that grueling day, what remained was not fame or fortune, but friendship, the kind that endures 24 hours of uncertainty and emerges stronger on the other side. And as Caitríona Balfe continues to heal, her story now carries a message far beyond the walls of any hospital. That the most powerful force in our lives is not the applause of strangers, but the presence of a friend who refuses to let go.